All right. Okay, so just I'm going to start by giving you some information about how this session will unfold. So I planned a list of things that I wanted to talk about, and I haven't timed myself, so I have no idea how long it's going to take. We planned about an hour and a half for this. It might be a little bit shorter. If it goes too long, then we'll schedule another session to continue and to explore more topics. But I don't think that will happen. So if you have questions as I speak, please write them in the chat, and then we'll take a few minutes at the end to do a Q&A. If you have a question related to something that I'm talking about right now, John will let me know. He's going to moderate the question, and so he can let me know if there's something that I should address right away. I'm going to speak in a personal capacity. I don't have all the answers. I miraculously managed to still be in the journalism industry 10 years after graduating. I don't know how. It's still a miracle. I don't know what happened. Well, I think I do know a little bit, but I know what I did. I don't know what other people did, so I can tell you about what I did, and hopefully you can learn from that. I also tend to have a little bit of unconventional views sometimes about the journalism industry and about managing a career. I've been looking at a lot of other industries for inspiration on how to do that. And so sometimes I say things that you may not hear from journalists typically. And so, you know, some ideas might not resonate immediately. That's fine. I'm just gonna turn things on you and take whatever you need. All right, so I wanted to know, first of all, where is everyone located right now? Would you mind putting in the chat right now where you are and which journalism school you graduated from or are about to graduate from? Montreal. Montreal, Toronto. Right, so Buffalo. All right. Okay, got someone studying in France. All right. Amazing. So a lot of Canadians. Okay, some international. Okay, perfect. So that helps. So I graduated from Concordia University's journalism program in 2009. So it was the middle of the recession. No one was hiring. Actually, it was quite the reverse. Everyone was laying off people massively. I remember taking a one-week internship at the CBC, and it was so dreadful. Like, people were crying in the bathrooms, and a lot of the desks were empty because they had gone through years of, you know, several rounds of layoffs. And so there were basically no opportunities that I saw, except people were telling me that maybe if I really wanted to make it, I could go work for a community newspaper somewhere really far away from Montreal and do community reporting for a while, and then hopefully, you know, make my way up the ladder and come back to Montreal one day. This was not an option for me because I've never been attracted to community reporting. I'm attracted to big cities and international coverage. And also I'm not from Canada, so like I have no attachment to these places. It became quite clear right away that I couldn't count on full-time employment, and that if I wanted to get my career started, I needed to make my own opportunities. So what I did is I graduated. I worked for that summer and a little bit into the fall to save money. I worked at a coffee shop. Like, you know, there's no, I mean, that's sometimes it's what it is. That's all that I could get at the time. And so I put some money aside and I went to Vancouver because the Olympics were coming up. So what I did at the time is like, I look at the opportunities that were around me, and were there some events that were gonna attract attention. So and the Olympics was an obvious one. So I packed my suitcases and I went, and I found a contract unpaid for a French newspaper. They wanted me to write a blog during the Olympics, and I took that. And then another newspaper saw my blog and they hired me to write a few articles, so paid articles during the Olympics. So that was my first experience freelancing and first experience doing international reporting. So that was great. And I was covering the social impact of the game. So I wasn't covering any of the events themselves, because it was, you have to be quite experienced to get a pass and everything. But actually I was not really interested in the sports themselves. I was interested in everything that was happening on the side. So I did that. It was great. It really confirmed kind of the topics that I was interested in, kind of more social. So I was still working. So I was working at a clothing store at the time. I was exhausted. Like, I don't know how, it's a miracle that I didn't burn out. It was so tough because I was working like 4 days a week, and then like the rest of the time going and do my research and my interviews. That was really, really intense. And then I thought that things would continue this way after the Olympics, and that I would keep on freelancing. But one, I really didn't like living in Vancouver for a number of reasons. And two, the freelancing didn't pick up at all. I was awful at it. I didn't sell one article. It was like a disaster. So I came back to Montreal. So the first like lesson that I wanted to share about that time, my time in Vancouver, was to just like planning a career in journalism. Like, you really gotta have to be smart. Like, there's no template for it. You're really gonna have to just like change your mindset and switch to like entrepreneurial, kind of like hustler mode. Just like try to be smart about like creating your own opportunities. A lot of the times at the beginning, it's not going to be paid, and you're going to have to find a way to make that work. So I know that's tough to hear. I had to go through that before I arrived at a level where I was paid for all of my contracts. And yeah, so I've been learning a lot about, like how to run a business, and, because I wanted to essentially become my own business, and I wanted to divide my activities between income generating and non-income generating. So I looked at business models that were hanging around, and there was this company called MediaStorm that was starting to become really known for its multi-platform projects. And I looked at how they worked, and the way they worked is that they had a part of the business for nonprofits, and that they do a lot of like their own content, and also they sell services to nonprofits for a lower price. And then they have the commercial side where they work with marketing companies and they sell content for advertising. And so I decided to like structure my activities just like that, and basically, take money from one side to finance my journalism activities. And of course, the second lesson would be to always have a plan B. Like, I didn't leave everything and think that freelancing would work. I was still working. Like, I always had a job, selling clothes, just working at a coffee shop, because, freelancing takes a lot of time to pick up. And so you have to know how you're gonna make money. All right, so what happened after that disaster? I came back to Montreal and I was like, okay, it's time to get serious. I started looking for full-time jobs. I got 2 offers after a couple of months of searching. I got one for Metro newspapers in Montreal. They wanted me to be an editor. And I got that job because they looked at my blog. I was running a blog at the time, and they really liked the topics. It was a lot of like commentary on society and all sorts of topics. And then I had designed the blog myself because I had taught myself how to code CSS and HTML, and and they really liked the way the blog looked. So that's the next lesson for you, is like, once you leave journalism school is not when you stop learning. Like, you constantly have to learn new skills all the time, because actually like journalism schools are not very good at teaching you a lot of the skills that you need. And so I started with CSS and HTML, and like I learned a mountain of the stuff afterwards. So that's truly how I got hired. Well, no, how I got the job offer, because I didn't take the job. I had another offer to work for a documentary film production company, and I was intrigued about working in documentary. And also they were growing their digital side, and they were telling me that if I was working for them, they would give me a lot of digital projects. So I took the documentary job because I had a long-term view about my career. I knew that I had a lot of skills to learn still, and that documentary would like give me a broader range of skills, and it did. I learned about how to run a company, how to make budgets. This became hugely useful when I started submitting grants and then planning for my own trips abroad, because I knew how to make a budget. And I knew how to make a budget. I knew how to cheat on a budget, and I knew how to cheat on a grant application, which no one will teach you how to do in journalism school. But I learned that from my boss, who's very good at cheating. And by what I mean by cheating is that when you ask for, when you write a grant, you write like there's a line for each expense. Where you can, you write, you put a higher number than the real. So you do your research. You're like, oh, I'm gonna need like $1,500 for a plane ticket. Well, so you put $2,000, and at the end you have a margin. So the difference is not that big that the person who gives the grant will be like, you're fooling us, like you're never gonna need that amount of money. But it's big enough for you to have a margin, and the margin you use for unforeseen stuff, or for, I mean, you always need a margin. Like, you always need a margin. Never make a budget and just like with the true cost that you're expecting, because there's always shit happening. So what else did I learn at that company? Well, I learned that I didn't like having a boss, because I didn't like my boss. So after that, I wanted to be a freelancer even more. I learned like working on projects. It was fun. What else? I quit. Oh, what I did is I quit after a while. So I realized that I still really, really wanted to do journalism. So I saved money from that job. And I quit everything, and I went to Brazil to continue my project on the Olympics. So after Vancouver, I really liked doing the Olympics coverage. So I was like, okay, where are the Olympics next? And I could see that a lot of events were happening in Brazil. And so I picked Brazil as a long-term project. So during my year at the documentary film company, I learned Brazilian Portuguese for a year, and I saved money. And then I researched Brazil like crazy. So you really need to take a long-term view. Like, you really need to invest your time. Like, if you have a goal, like, just like start, like, plan for it. You know, like, set your goal and then do like a backtracking plan. Like how's it called? Like forget the term. Anyway, like you start working on it right away. And then you put the things in place so that when the time comes, you can achieve your goal. Journalism is like a very, very like long-term planning thing, because it takes a really long time to reap the benefits, I find. because when you're junior, you know, like you don't, I mean, it's really hard to have a big break right away. So you really have to invest in yourself early on, so that like 5 years, 10 years later, you start like seeing results. So I wrote something in my notes here about like, yeah, so I talked about like continuing to learn skills. Another thing is like, read about your industry, because like you really need to be smart about how the media industry works, which I find a lot of journalists and a lot of journalism students are not very, like, they don't do that. And like they don't understand how they're getting screwed, really. So really like, and I also find it really interesting, but like the economics of it, the business, it's really interesting. It's really important right now to understand like the media is run, like the business is run by people who don't understand journalism. And that's why you have a lot of companies that are laying people off right now, or like making these decisions. Like 2 years ago, it was the big like pivot to video thing. Those absurd decisions were made by people who thought that running a newspaper or website was the same as running any other kind of company. And then everyone got screwed. So I think it's really important. So you read the blogs, read Columbia Journalism Review, you know, once in a while. There's a lot of resources for that. Follow people on Twitter. And then the other thing I wrote here is like developing a personal brand is like I have a love-hate relationship with this, because like it's an absolute must. You really need to have your own personal brand as a journalist, but like it sucks the life out of me, to be honest. So you need to be on Twitter, of course. You need to be on like, well, Twitter is the most important. You don't need to be on LinkedIn really if you don't do other types of contracts. You need to have your own. So I had my blog at the time because blogs were big. Now I have a newsletter, a weekly newsletter. So it's really, so you can be on Medium too. I think it's really important for people to see your voice when it's not expressed through articles, especially at the beginning when you get these crappy assignments, you know, like the 150-word article that, you know, no one cares about. You need to like get your words out, your voice out, the topics that you care about out. It's also for yourself to remind yourself why you're doing this, and as much as for other people to see like what you're really made of. That being said, I think social media is toxic. I could live without. I can't, because that's how it is, especially as a journalist. So I find it exhausting. I've drastically reduced my Twitter consumption because, I mean, it just made me sick. I cut it actually for a couple of years. Now I'm back, but very, very mindfully. And yeah, so the problem is that more and more like journalists are their own brands, and that, you know, whether you're a freelancer or you're working or you're employed for a media, you're gonna get laid off, you know, like 2 years later, you're gonna want to change jobs. So the media that you're attached to doesn't matter as much as it used to. So you really have to like make yourself, your image, your brand stand out on its own. There's also this thing about like, there's like this very recent trend about the rise of the influencer journalists. I'm gonna post a link in the chat because Sadie Hall published an article about that recently that was very insightful. Where is everyone? So yeah, so basically there's this trend of like super cool journalist that always writes, you know, like Gia Tolentino. She's so perfect. I mean, I respect her, but like, she is made for this industry. She is like perfect for this industry. I cannot be like her. I don't write like her. I don't express my, like, you know, I rumble when I speak. I'm not quick to like think through my ideas. I think it's unfair that some people are cut out for a career like this. But anyway, I think we're going to see a lot more personalities like this in the future. A word about finding your niche. Someone sent a question through the forum earlier, and so I wanted to address this, and finding your beat also. So how do you find, should you have a beat, and how do you find like which area of journalism you belong to? So regarding beats, I have a few. I have cities, so like urban planning. I have international development, which I didn't really choose, but I kind of like fell into it. I had the Olympics big, like the international sports event beat for a while. I could still reactivate that if I wanted to. I think these are the three main ones. And you don't have to, I think I like having more than one beat. I mean, you don't have to. I also like that I can switch from one to the other. Yeah, I'm open to having another one. I find it easier to establish yourself, but perhaps if you have a beat, although it kind of like, you know, having the cities beat is interesting, but it's not as glamorous as having like social commentary beat. And I find also that's unfair because like you're less likely to get a book deal, for instance, if you have or like the international aid beat. Like only international aid people care about international aid. So so that's another thing that I didn't really know when I got into these beats. It's hot in here, by the way. About niches. So I used my internships during my degree to like really try a lot of different kinds of jobs. I'm aware that not everyone has that luxury. The system is absolutely abusive. The fact that you have to do unpaid internships in order to graduate and get your foot in the door is like abhorrent. I did it because my parents supported me. By the way, if you want to get into journalism, like there's no secret, like if you have a family that supports you, you'll have way better chances of going to school and then, you know, getting support when times are tough. And that's super disgusting. But I also have no shame of talking about the fact that it happened for me, because I'm really aware that I'm here because my parents supported me when, you know, when I went through rough times. On that optimist note, what else? Yes, niches. So I did that a lot through internships, and also through my first job, you know, like just taking a detour through documentary was really cool. And then like coming back, you can always change. I feel during your career, that's fine. Although it's maybe a little harder later to rebrand yourself if you want to pivot. I don't know how to pivot. And but then like 10 years later, I find like I'm a little bitter, but like I loved so many things. I loved radio, I loved film, I love photography, and I really hope that I could do a little bit of everything, but I found it really hard to stick to, well, to actually, it was just so hard to even make money from one, that I had to give all my energy. And so I chose writing, and I had no time left for film and radio. And I'm a bit sad about it. That's what it is. But and especially if you have another job on the side, it's really hard to like develop your expertise and then make a name for yourself and actually do projects. So I am sure some people manage to do it. I haven't found a way yet. Okay, so back to what I did. So is everyone cool? Like, is it okay? Am I talking a lot too much? Like, let me know. Okay, awesome. So again, so my trip to Brazil, I saved tons of money. So again, like never take uncalculated risk. Take risks, but calculate the risk and make sure that you're gonna be okay if things go bad. So I was there for 2 months, and I did a lot of really, really like deep research around like the social impacts of the Olympics, the eviction. So I studied the favelas. I read everything about the favelas. I studied like paramilitarization of police, the drug trade. Like I did way more research than I needed to. And I sold one article for $150. So I think I invested about like $4,000 into that trip, and I made $150. So that's the truth. That's the reality. That's, you know, I also wrote a few articles for free. So I did quite a bit of work for free. And so that was necessary to get me started in international journalism, because I found that no one would buy an article about international politics from a young female journalist who has never written about this. And there's a lot of, you know, like, it's really sad that it has to be this way. And I hear a lot of journalists, like more senior, who are like, don't let young journalists work for free because it skews the market. Well, yeah, but when it's your only way, like, so I would say, like, you can work for free, but not too long. Just like there's a time when you should stop and start asking for money. So the trip to Brazil, and it helped me build my portfolio, and that was instrumental to me getting all the contracts later on. So same thing, like if I expected returns right away, it didn't happen, but I got returns later for sure. So something that I changed my mind about the way that I viewed my journalism career after a while, you know, seeing that it took such a long time. And I took inspiration from photographers who work, like they use this concept of the body of work. So as a photographer, you patiently build a practice, an artistic practice. And over time you develop, you know, and the goal also is to really, like, if you look at the body of work of a photographer, like, it's actually expected that the work will evolve over time, and people will look at a photographer's work and like, oh, you remember, like at the beginning of his career he was into this and that, and then he evolved into this. I don't see why journalism could be that way. You know, like I see my career much more like a global thing that expands over time. And so it's okay that everything doesn't happen right away, because it's more like a totality. But again, you have to be okay with being patient. So one more thing about like the length of things. I was so scared that if I took a break, or, you know, like if I didn't produce, then I wouldn't be able to sell more articles. Like I thought that I had to have relevant clips, you know. I don't think that the time of publication of your previous publications matters as much. I think it's fine if you're pitching an editor and you're like, oh, here are some things that I wrote. It's fine if it was like 2 years ago. I thought that I really needed to stay on all the time. And I realized that it's actually okay to take a break if you need to make money, if you need to do like go get some marketing contracts or do something else for a while. That it's okay, you can come back to it. And that's actually the more senior I get, the easier it is to do that, because like I have, you know, I can show things that I've done before. Like I don't think the stakes are that high. So yeah, so I would recommend to like chill, you know, like it's okay, just do what you have to do, take the contract in PR marketing, and come back to journalism when you're ready. So like I said, the Brazil trip didn't pay off at the beginning, but it paid off in 2013, because I applied to a fellowship from Aga Khan Foundation Canada, and they sent me to work in Kenya for 8 months for a local media group called Nation Media Group. And of course, when they selected me, they looked at my portfolio and they saw the work that I had done in Brazil and everywhere, and so I was selected on the basis of that. So I went to Kenya for 8 months. It was a very I would say it was a catalyzer in terms of me being exposed to like international journalism, and people, like I got to meet quite a few like professional journalists, established. That's where I developed my beat in international aid. So that definitely helped prop up my career in a way. The negative side of that is I got post-traumatic stress disorder out of it, so that was less nice. And AKFC, the foundation, would take no responsibility for it. So I think the lessons, like, one reason they didn't take responsibility is because I signed an abusive contract, and I didn't know at the time. And in my 20s, I was so eager. I was so eager to make it work. And of course, I didn't have the money to hire a lawyer to look at the contract, because if I did, they would have flagged some things. So this industry is very abusive, I find. Like, it works on the premise that we're desperate about wanting work and that we will accept anything. And people know that. And it's a systemic, right? Like, it's not one person or like specifically, like, it's like, that's how. And the problem is that because the industry has, it has like, what's the word? Deteriorated over the past like 20, 30 years, slowly, you know, like slowly. So things happen without people clearly realizing it. And one day you wake up and you can't pay the bills, you know, and like, and then you're like, how it is that today, like, we're working in such abusive conditions. Like, no one noticed like the moment when it changed because it happened slowly, but it's fucking abusive. And I want, like, I want to be honest about this, because like I'm tired of seeing young journalists like getting into like exploitative situations. And I think it's really time, and that's why I'm part of S'ATTAQ. Like, it's like we need to start talking about this and pressure media organizations for more sustainable business models, because it's not okay to hire a journalist for an assignment that is potentially dangerous and pay them like $150, you know. But somehow it's become accepted. By the way, like, international journalism, which was my dream, like, I found out is also, it's like, it's one of the most abusive, I think, in terms of like how hungry people are for contracts and how dangerous it is. It's also full of people who have post-traumatic stress disorders and drink a lot and are not very okay. So things are changing. People are doing a lot of work to change the culture, and so that's great. Things are changing, but I did not expect that when I arrived in that sector. I hope I'm not depressing you too much. I love my job. It's the best job in the world. So the next thing actually that I want to address was resilience and self-care, because burnout is real, post-traumatic stress disorder happens, mental health is important, and it's not just for journalists, but it's in a lot of fields. I think there's been this awakening in the past couple of years that we're tired, we're exhausted, like everyone, and that, you know, capitalism has like evolved into this exploitative machine that just like sucks the life out of people. So I wish there was a way to make journalists remember that your job is not a reflection of who you are, even though it's your passion, even though, you know, like, you would do anything for it. The money that you're paid for it is not a reflection of your value. Because the moment when I started taking marketing contracts a couple of years ago and I was paid market rates, I was floored. I was shocked by how easy marketing work was. I was shocked by how much I could ask for money. I was shocked by practices in the marketing industry of like, I'm going to pay you 50% of your contract up front, versus in journalism, I'm going to pay you on publication, but then really not, because like we don't have the funds, and so I'll pay you one day or not. I had internalized that. I thought this was it. Like I thought this was normal, and it really like it twisted my brain. So the one part of like doing more non-journalism work for me was like get back into like get a sense of reality, or like, get other perspectives, and realize like I am not my job. Like I love my job and I'm passionate about it, but like I am not my job. So basically I spent my 20s like working so like exhausting myself, working nights and weekends on personal projects. And then finally I got PTSD, and I had like in 2016 I had no choice but to stop. And now I'm spending all my 30s trying to find balance and do self-care. So if I had, I did what I had to do, you know, like no regrets. So the thing is like, I feel like 10 years ago, maybe it was still possible to make a living full-time as a freelancer. I did that for a couple of years, and then I reached a plateau. It was like, okay, I made like, I think my best year was like almost 40,000 on journalism alone. I had no more time. Like I was working all the time. It was like, how could I make more money? So I was like, so is this gonna be my life now? Just making like 40K a year, which basically if I want to start a family is nothing. And now it's even more difficult. So now I would say it's even more difficult to make that money, because the cost of living is increasing, but our wages are staying the same. So essentially with inflation, they're decreasing. So freelance rates have not increased in real dollars since the 80s. We're working with the same fees than in the 80s. Like there's no other industry that will take that shit. It's just us, you know, because we care so much about our jobs. So like, that's also one of the reasons why I'm doing this webinar. Like we need to talk about these things. It's not okay. So it's increasingly clear that you need to do other work if you go the freelance route. It's increasingly clear that you need to do other work on the side to sustain yourself. So I had someone ask a question in the form of like, how do you manage the finances? As a freelancer, I would say if you want to keep your sanity, just do other work, like for a number of reasons, you know, like and just for the sake of like being exposed to other industry practices. Right now, I've decided that, well, so because I have I'm still in recovery. I do therapy for PTSD, and it's very expensive. So I have no choice. Like I have these huge medical bills, and so I have to make money, and I can't work. Now I can work full time. For a few years I couldn't work full time, so I need to make a lot of money and not work as much. So I went into marketing for that reason. And I realized that my energy is being less like sucked by journalism, because when your sole income comes from your passion, it's draining. Because at the end, like I had two priorities, like one being fulfilled and two making money. And of course, like the making money was more important. And so I got contracts that I didn't really give a shit about. So then I found myself a few years ago being like, I don't think I'm happy. I don't even know why, because I'm supposed to have this like dream job. Like it was my dream, you know, and I'm not happy. Like what's going on? And it's because like I was accepting contracts that I like top, you know, just it was like money making. So now I'm more in the mindset of I'm going to do a lot less journalism. I'm really going to pick and choose the projects that I want to work on. Probably work on projects, maybe like reporting trips. And then, stop like taking crappy contracts. I have the luxury to do that because now I'm a bit established. So I think that's okay. It's also like I see it as an investment strategy, like in terms of revenue generating opportunities, like all freelancers, not just journalists, but like all freelancers, and then I think employed people too will have to get really smart about their sources of income, because when you lose a big contract or if you lose a job, then you have nothing. And work is becoming increasingly unstable, you know, like you never know when you're gonna get laid off. You have these very small, like short-term contracts. So you can't rely on one source of income only. So you need to start thinking about how to diversify your revenue streams. And that's, I'm in that stage now. Like I'm trying to learn a lot about what that means. So I'm being told like, develop some intellectual property, like do a course, like a recurring course, or like write a manual or something and sell it. I need to think about what that means for a journalist, because I also don't want to like start something that's again not gonna make money. So that's the new era. Like we're gonna need to get smart about yeah, how we make money. All right, so what happened after 2014? I go back to Montreal. Then things start picking up. Like it's, well, quite miraculously, I get a recurring contract for one media organization. And that's like enough to pay the bills. And so therefore it gives me some stability to like build on that. Because if you want to freelance full time and you don't have like one or two recurring clients, it's really, really hard. So I did that. I still write for them actually. They're my it's DevX. They're my longest standing client. Anyway, I have some funny stories about DevX. They wouldn't increase, like they never wanted to increase my rates. Even after like 5 years of writing for them. Fuck them. Anyway, so I did that, and then I wanted to do, so then I was ready for like something a bit bigger. So I applied for a grant from the European Journalism Center to do a big reporting trip abroad. So by the way, so I'm talking about like applying for stuff. You need to apply for shit. Like you need to start applying for grants, for fellowships. You need to like anything you can get your hands on. And you need to start being okay with rejection, because there's so much rejection in this industry. Like it's not like personal or anything, but like when you're pitching, you get rejected all the time. When you apply for grants, you get rejected. You never know how they'll tell you. If you don't have a tough skin, you can start taking it personally, and you just have to persevere. And on that note, like women are less likely, like it's just we're socialized to not take risk and persevere. So women will, you know, give up more easily and go for like a more stable career. I've seen that, you know, like it's crazy, by the way. Like if you do like international journalism, it's crazy. Like everyone suddenly is a man, when in journalism school it's like 2/3 of students are women. I've seen. I went back to Concordia to an alumni event a few years ago, and there were a lot of recent graduates from 2018 or 2019. All the men had gone to journalism, all the women had gone into communications. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, why? What happened? I mean, they all wanted to become journalists when they signed up for school. Like, I don't understand. Anyway, so perseverance is a skill. It's like a muscle that can be trained. And you need to learn how to be okay with rejection. So I applied for that grant, and they gave me a shit ton of money to go abroad. I was smart because I had learned how to budget. So I tweaked, I gamed the budget and got more money than I needed. And so I was very comfortable. I didn't use it as a salary. I used it for the project. But I knew that when you get on the ground, stuff happens. So like I didn't have to get stressed about the money. I hired people for the first time. I hired photographers. I hired like marketing consultants. It was great. Yeah, so I think I would do that again, but I've been too ill to like do reporting trips abroad. So it's gonna have to wait. Okay. Something else I wanted to talk about is like, I wish journalism feels very lonely sometimes, especially if you're a freelancer, but even in other, like it's very competitive, and the culture is based on like, you know, this very macho competitive culture, like a show off. And it's starting to change, which is a good thing, because we need more collaboration, you know, like we really, really need to start talking, to exchange tips. So I would really recommend to like seek groups of journalists. So I'm a member of S'ATTAQ. We're part of IWW. There's also the Freelance Journalist Union that was formed a couple of years ago. It's also an IWW project, but we're not we're distinct from them. So that's union. So we're more our efforts concentrate more on improving labor, like work conditions and labor rights. There's also journalist associations. Some of them are better than others. And then there's Study Hall. So if you don't know about Study Hall, look it up. It's this collective of journalists. It's online. It's amazing. This is changing the game. Study Hall is this like place where you can ask questions about anything, where you can receive help, you can ask people to review your pitches, to get advice, you know, which publications treat people well or not. It's really, really like breaking that toxic culture of like, we're in competition for the same jobs and therefore I won't help you. It's really, really, really nice. One thing that's, so it's not organized, but sometimes members will organize themselves to run campaigns. And so like one of them was last year, some people decided to publish their rates, which is also a very unusual thing to do because people don't disclose. Like one of the hardest thing about financing is that there's no transparency around rates. So you might accept a rate thinking it's a good one, when in reality that publication has paid other people much higher. And that's not good for us. So we're talking about like how to bring transparency and have to have like how to publish our rates. I'll put a few other links about unions. I'm sweating, I'm sorry, it was like fucking hot here. And the Freelance Journalist Union. I was swearing a lot too, I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry. All right, yes, and especially, I mean, like, journalism is such a white industry, you know, if you're a white man, like, great, you've hit the jackpot. If you're a woman or a person of color, like, it's much harder. It's much harder to place articles about your communities because the media doesn't care as much. It's much harder to to go through school, like if you're from a low-income background. So yeah, like, so if you can find your like support group or peers to get through this, I wish there were more ways for like white journalists to support non-white journalists actively, like to be allies. In Study Hall, we're slow, like is really like, those are tricky conversations to have, but like there's conversations about like how to do that. Yeah, it's difficult work, but we're getting there, so hopefully. So yeah, like be mindful of like the things that influence your success as a journalist. Like, yes, there's your work, but a big part of it is your circumstances, and we don't have the same circumstances, all of us. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about like alternative and parallel careers. I think I touched on this a little bit, like the need to find other revenue streams. Fortunately, I find there's more things that there's more ways to sell your skills now. Like if you need to complement your income, it used to be that, oh, you do public relations. It was kind of like the only thing. Right now, you can do content strategy, copywriting, of course, but more like strategy, editorial, especially for startups, because content is really big right now. And so there's a big need for people who know how to like develop a voice and a style and a strategy and what to talk about. So those are great avenues. So either if you want to go full-time into it or as a freelance thing, as a side hustle. Audience development is also getting really big in marketing and in journalism. I took a course last year on audience engagement. That was really, really fun because it really made me understand, like, a lot of the times the media organizations, journalists are terrible at understanding their audiences. And so we write and publish articles, but we really don't know if it's being received, by whom, if there's a audience group that's getting ignored. So that's another type of job that you can look for. In journalism, there's also a product, what's the term, like product development, which is more like, there's a lot of new jobs that are bridging editorial and business, or editor and marketing, or editor and tech. And those are actually really fun. So you can do like, you can like be like product owner. That's the term I was looking for. Let's say you're a product owner, and so you would be responsible for managing the newsletter of a newspaper. And so you would be responsible for like measuring audience engagement and how to structure the newsletter and what works and what's not. So it's really fun. Or you can do something different. And I have a friend who does research. She has a research contract for a nonprofit. So that's another avenue. I find North America to be a lot more lenient in how, like, it allows you to shift between industries. Europe is a lot less like that. Okay, last topic. Should you quit? And if so, when? When do you know you should quit? Because I've asked that question to myself so many times, like when you're exhausted and it's not working, and like, is it time to quit? Well, first of all, I would say, are you thinking of quitting, or are you just needing to take a break? Because that's different. Like, if you have some economic sort of pressure, financial pressure, and you got bills to pay, or someone in your family got sick, and you need to pay the hospital or take care of them. Like I said earlier, it's okay. Like, take a break, do what you have to do, and come back later. It's totally fine. Again, like, if you think of quitting, like, do you think? Always ask yourself that, like, what would a white man do? Would the white man quit? Like, that's the test for all life decisions. What would a cisgender white man do? Sorry if there's like white men in the audience, but it's like the reality. Are you quitting because, like, you're lacking self-confidence, or you quit? Do you want to quit because you're not seeing results? I would say, talk to people first. Like, seek someone in the industry, someone you look up to. Go for a coffee to talk it out before making a decision. I never quit because I'm just stubborn. I think it's a character trait. It was naive and totally like inconscient in French. It was immature, I guess, but I just didn't want to quit. Yeah, and then if you do want to quit, then that's fine, but just like know that you gave it everything you could. But I just want you to understand, like, there's like reasons, sometimes systemic reasons, that make people want to quit. Someone asked, yes, actually someone just sent me a question, and someone had asked that question in the form, should you go back to school right now? No, don't go back to school. So that's my personal opinion. I've seen people go back to school during the after the 2008 recession because they couldn't find jobs. I'm not convinced that it helped further their career in journalism in any way. So I'm going to say about journalism schools specifically, journalism schools are good for one thing: contacts, internships, and contacts. And there's a huge imbalance between the people who went, and I went to Concordia University, and it was really hard to break in international journalism. Anyone else in international journalism has gone to Columbia University. Like, when I realized that, I was like, are you kidding me? Like, is that what it takes? They all went to Columbia University. Like, the game is rigged. It's not a death sentence. I still made it. So like, there's hope, but you know, we don't have the same chances. So I don't think a journalism school will give you the skills you need. I think a lot of the skills that I'm using, I learned from like by myself and by just practicing. So don't go back to journalism school if you think you're going to gain skills. Don't go back to journalism school if the structure, like if the program that you're looking to doesn't have like a solid structure to like place you in prestigious internships or fellowships, or if the profs, you know, are very like are famous to some extent and like have the ability to like make you network and stuff. Like really look at the aura of the program, you know, like yeah, and look at what people who have done this program have done after. This gives you like a pretty good idea of, you know, career prospects. And I'm not sure that, especially if you go into debt to do a master's, I'm not sure that it's wise to take on more debt at this point, especially during a recession. Like, I'm just not convinced. So I thought of it when I graduated. I was just so eager I just wanted to work. I just wanted to get to work. And so I really didn't want to like delay that by another couple of years. Yeah, maybe someone has another opinion. I don't know. I'm just not convinced by the examples that I've seen. So maybe you can wait and then go back a few years later for a master's, if you think like it's gonna bring you more than just like something to do while no one's hiring. But if you want to go back just because there's a recession, like there's no jobs around, like I said, create your own opportunities. Like, it's a great time to like create your own unconventional opportunity. I think that's it. So I'm gonna look at the questions we have. Okay, what other hard skills do you think we should be learning right now during lockdown? So coding, big time coding. HTML, CSS, and probably, if you're up for it, like the other stuff, whose name I forget right now, but coding. Something it's very funny, but I wish I had learned graphic design, because anytime I have to like market my work, or I don't know, like create my website, or if I want to like host an event like this, or like, I really wish I could do the whole branding by myself. I have a friend who has a business, and her background is in graphic design, and her brand looks amazing. And you think she has a whole team behind her, and it's just her. So I don't know, that's just an idea. So what are the skills? A lot of like, not hard skills actually, but soft skills, like negotiation, like collaboration, a lot of skills from business, especially negotiation, if you have to negotiate your fees. What else? In terms of hard skills, I think like the more like audio, if you've been trained for one field, like just like if you can be versatile, audio production, film production, photography, because now you have to kind of do everything. But learn the skills of like social media strategy. There's so many free online courses, like how to run a social media marketing campaign, how to do comment moderation, audience engagement is a course I took last year. Yeah, it's a lot of marketing stuff. Because if you can speak the language of marketing, I think it gives you an advantage. What else? I mean, I took so many classes, I don't remember. In terms of hard skills, I had a contract once. They were using marketing contracts. They were using advanced WordPress. That was really useful too. I think now maybe not everyone uses Word, like maybe it would have been on Squarespace, but like all these like web design skills. Now I'm interested in learning about like, so more audience engagement, how to like grow a newsletter, how to manage a product, an editorial product. Languages, a lot. Languages, learn languages. And yeah, I need to think about this, but that's what I'm thinking about right now. Is the master's helpful? Yeah, we got this one. Yeah, John, did you?
Oh, I was just gonna say we got two questions in the chat right now. A question about how coding can help us as young journalists, and one about how to find marketing or PR work to do alongside journalism. Like, how do you find those contracts?
What's the first one? What's the first question?
How specifically coding can help us in our career as young journalists?
Oh, I've had to use CSS and HTML. So first of all, I've always coded my own websites, like my personal portfolio, my blogs. I'm gonna show you what I did. So when I got that grant, it was for a project on refugees in East Africa. And of course, I mean, they gave me money, but not much. So I used my WordPress skills and coding skills, and I built the website myself, which I think is not bad. So yeah, and all the time, like if you're hired to do like some, even social media, sometimes they'll ask you to like tweak some lines of code, you know, like and you have to know like the basics of CSS and HTML to do that. If you're hired like on a yeah, like all media run with content management systems. So if you work in-house, it's likely that you're gonna be asked to like enter content in the CMS, and working with any CMS, so WordPress, Squarespace, blah blah blah, you really, if you know coding, it really saves you a lot of time. And then like, so if you also hard skills like data journalism is a big niche in journalism right now. So if you want to learn like data and coding for data, so like how to make queries and stuff, that's very useful, statistics and things like that. So that's really big for especially investigative journalism. So, and again, I believe there's some free courses on that. So that's for coding. And the other one, sorry, I forgot. What was the second question?
It was about how you can find marketing or PR contracts.
Good question. How do I network? So you're gonna have to do a lot of networking. Yeah, that's a big one. I had to learn how to network. I wasn't very good at it. I'm not a very like social, I'm not at ease in social settings. So I had to learn how to show up to events. You know, you need to have your business card printed so they can give it to people. I got my, I don't know, like it was like word of mouth. I got my first contract in documentary, and then the partners that we were working with, like I stayed in touch with them and they hired me for contracts. So I think you can also like not cold call, but like get in touch with marketing agencies in town, and they're always looking for junior writers, you know, so get into the like their databases for writers, send them an email, have a little portfolio ready online or something to show, a resume. Yeah, I think that's a first step. And there's like job boards. So some organizations that I mentioned have job boards, but like you can maybe sign up for a marketing job board. A lot of Facebook groups have ads for contract work. Yeah, but my contracts I always got from word of mouth. So it's really, really important to like network and like just keep up with your contacts, and yeah, stay in touch. Yeah. And ethics is really important. Like always do a good job, be square with people, turn your work on time. You have to be easy to work with, like easy, like it has to be easy to work with you. Otherwise people won't hire you again. So be nice, turn your work on time, just be clean, everything. I hope that's a good answer. Like I said, like a lot of times my career feels like I don't know how it happened. I have no idea. Like it just happened. It's a miracle. I don't know. Full disclosure. So I was on contract with Wired since September. It was a long-term contract. I had been hired to write about cities. And then COVID hit, and Condé Nast, which owns Wired, was one of the first media companies to like go down, and because their business model was shit, because they never got their act together. So they lost too much money from advertising, reduced advertising, and so immediately they started to do layoffs. I was cut, so I lost my contract at Wired. And yeah, so now it's back to square one. So I have marketing contracts. It's going to be what it's going to be. Like next few months, it's going to be marketing. And then maybe I'll start thinking about like doing journalism again. But, it happens. And I'm just so like, what I'm most angry at is like Wired, Condé Nast had a good 10 years to think about their business model, to not repeat 2008, 2009. And it didn't happen. They missed it. They missed the mark. Like so to lose my contract because of someone's inability to like figure things out feels a little bit bitter. Otherwise, like whatever, it's their loss. I'm sure I get something great after this. Another question, like lots of journal unions and associations ask you to pledge you're not doing PR before joining. Yes, I assumed it was like going to the dark side, but you seem to go back and forth between comms and journalism. Did your PR work cause you any issues for your party? Oh my God, I hate when they do that. I fucking hate it. Like, how do they expect us to live? So there's like journal associations making us sign a pledge that we're not doing PR. There's like journal associations making us sign a pledge that we make more than 50% of our income from journalism. Like, who does, like if you do marketing is going to pay more. So if you have to, let's say the volume of your work might be like 75% journalism, 25% marketing, but the income might be reversed. And so you're coming and you're like, well, no, I didn't make much money from journalism because duh, it doesn't pay. And they're like, oh, sorry, you can't be a member. It's absurd. So LAGIC, I'm a member of LAGIC. They have signed a pledge that we don't do PR. So I don't do PR. First of all, because I don't like it. It's not my cup of tea. And also because things like that. If I did PR, like I think I would be smart enough to take contracts that are not like where there's no conflict of interest. Like I think our whole job is about ethics. Like we have brains. Like. So something like this is not adapted, I think, to the current reality of journalists. The marketing work, like I try to keep these two quiet, I don't really talk, if I'm in the journalism set, I don't talk about marketing, and if I'm in marketing, I don't really talk about journalism. So far, I haven't had a problem. I will, I've never had a situation where I had to turn down a contract because of potential conflict of interest. If it happened, I would turn it down. Yeah, so it's not been an issue for me. But then, yeah, like you cannot, like, I mean, the game is rigged, like, and I get that they're doing it because like the associations, they want to protect us from accusations of conflict of interest, and it has happened. Like in Quebec, there was this guy, he wrote about something like it, and then they found out that he was making money, blah blah blah. Like just be smart, like just like don't take contracts where there could be a conflict of interest. Otherwise, you know, if I have to do PR to eat, well, I need to eat, man. Like, you know, it's like, anyway, I'll survive without the journal association, I think, but I won't survive without eating. So, you know, yeah. How is everyone doing? Would anyone like to share like how they feel, or I don't know, like if they have fears about what's coming up, or John, do you want to tell me what are your plans, John?
Yeah, sure. So I have, I mean, like I mentioned earlier in the introduction, I'm graduating journalism school right now. I'm sort of like formally entering the labor market, but I feel like okay about it because I've actually been freelancing already for a couple of years, and I think that I have like uh, I mean, something like enough of a name for myself that like I'll at least get responses when I send pitches to places. And so that feels good. But it's definitely sort of nerve wracking, right? To like enter into this market where there are layoffs happening everywhere, and I'm seeing a question came in about any thoughts about the sale of Torstar, and I mean that's another thing, right? Like we have like the major, like one of the last, you know, like big, largely independent major media outlets, is Torstar, was just sold to a hedge fund that has like a history of like donating to Maxime Bernier, you know, like a far right politician, and yeah, I mean it's not great, right? I personally, what I've been doing is I have mostly been working with smaller independent media outlets, and I have established relationships with them through like working with independent media more regularly over time. So that feels like a little bit of a cushion that I can rely on in terms of being able to find paid freelance contracts. And so yeah, I think penetrating like the sphere of independent media is probably easier to do than it is for like larger media outlets in some ways, and doing so allows for you to like, you know, like make a name for yourself and do the types of writing that you maybe want to be doing more, and allows you to sort of like have a name that you can use to try to get larger contracts in the future. So it's a thing that I've found has worked for me over the past couple of years, and I hope to continue doing as I like go into full-time freelancing for now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Someone just asked about tips on where to start with getting published in Montreal, and I have no idea because I don't write for a Canadian publication. So do you have any tips?
Yeah, I mean, I write pretty regularly for Ricochet, which is a independent. I mean, they're a lot of the team is based in Montreal, but they're like a pan-Canadian outlet of like independent media. One of the like I guess somewhat larger of the independent media outlets, and so they're quite approachable. Even like much earlier in the process when I like didn't really have a name for myself, they always responded to the emails that I sent out. And so yeah, I would advise like you go to Ricochet, you go to Briar Patch also is again, that's like a Canadian outlet, but they're pretty good at responding to pitches, even if they don't end up accepting them. Yeah, I guess if you're looking for Anglo media, there's not a ton of like Anglo specific media in that's like Montreal focused, other than like, you know, the Montreal Gazette or things like that. So I don't know, from my experience, I would say to like look at like independent media outlets that are like sometimes Canada wide, but will also run local stories, and I find that that's a good way to get yourself published.
Yeah. There's this new one. Have you heard of La Converse? No, it's just launched. So like participative journalism, or I don't know, like it's very low. It's in Montreal. It's a local thing. So it's when a new organization gets created, it's always an opportunity to pitch and to write for them.
We've got a question. We've got a question that's directed towards you, Flavie. That is, as a Canadian, do you have any tips for pitching to international publications?
It depends. It depends if you're pitching about Canada or if you're pitching about like other topics. Like I write about other subjects. Sorry, I'm looking at this. Maybe it's called like okay, here it is. I don't have the direct link, but if I post a link about La Converse, you can look it up yourself. Oh, it's the discourse. Okay, it's the same thing. All right, get it now. Yeah, so if you write about Canada, I think a lot of people would be interested in the Canadian and like a Canadian news, but like the Canadian perspective on the world. So I think that's a good way to approach international publications. The New York Times launched their own Canada newsletter a few years ago because they recognized that a lot of their readership was here, and so there is, and also because after Trudeau was elected, there was interest in seeking the Canadian perspective. So I would so there's that. And for pitching about other topics, so I mean, you have to travel, you have to get the expertise, so you need to travel on the ground, and I mean, it's really, really difficult. It's a very difficult market because it doesn't pay well at all. So like you need to be very, very solid about how you're gonna finance your trips. You gotta pitch. It's easier to like start pitching in advance to get an idea of who's gonna respond, and even then, and they might tell you, yes, we're interested, but it doesn't mean they're gonna take your story. So it's a real, it's almost like a venture investing. It's such a high risk occupation for, you just don't know if it's gonna work out. So so places like Study Hall are great for getting contacts, although they're more focused on North American media. But if you can, it's always hard. I find it hard somehow to get in touch with editors. The European market works in a very different way, so it's always good to like find a way to like get into European circles, like meet European journalists, because then they will know how things work. A strange thing is that when you call European newspapers, and like especially French ones, someone picks up the phone and they will tell you, like you can contact this person, and so that's easy. I mean, it's just essentially works the same way. Just track the name of the editor of the section that covers your topic and send a pitch, and it's just the same process. I hope that helps.
I think you kind of covered this a little bit previously, but somebody asked a little bit up in the chat, and I guess I missed it, about any ideas on how to network during the pandemic.
How to network during the pandemic? Online. So Study Hall is a very, very active Slack channel. It's even better to network during the pandemic because before you had to be physically present, and that's not fair when you're, like, for me, like, there's not a lot of people in Montreal who do international journalism, and I stayed here for a number of reasons, but ideally I would have moved to a more like central place that like, where so usually people are based in big capitals, and like Beirut or Mexico, and they don't stay here. So it ends up being isolating because you cannot go to the events and the 5 à 7. So it's much harder to keep up with, to network and keep in touch with your contacts. So I would say, yeah, this like just be part of a Facebook group. I've had people like contact me before to like ask me questions, and that's fine. Like if there's a journalist whose work you like, feel free to get in touch, but like just like with specific questions, or like ask them for a short amount of time, because it's they're very busy. So I've had people like ask me for my sources or my content. Like, don't do that. Like, I work too hard to give out my contacts to anyone. But if you want to buy me coffee and, you know, chat, then sure, I'll do it for like 45 minutes. So yeah, I would say like, so study hall, what else? How to network during the pandemic. Yeah, just how do you network, John? Like that, I mean, I'm not networking right now. I don't need to, I think. I have my Twitter. I'm networking through Twitter. That's the thing, Twitter.
Yeah, I think Twitter has been helpful for me. Yeah, I mean, also just like, yeah, I think just really the act of sending pitches is something that helps a lot. Even if you have like an idea that, you know, like you think like, oh, there's not a huge chance that that this gets accepted, but it's almost always worth sending a pitch, right? To like introduce yourself, show like, you know, maybe if it's the first time reaching out to an editor, maybe like include like a couple of links to some of the work that you're particularly proud of, and just sort of get yourself on like an editor's radar that you'd like to work with, even if this specific pitch doesn't get picked up. And sometimes it does, you know, but even if it doesn't, then like you've like put yourself on a person's like radar, you know, is something that I've found has been helpful. And also Twitter. Because yeah, Twitter is the, you know, main social network of journalists, I guess. So it's something that I found has been helpful.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, I think that's it, and we're exactly at the hour-and-a-half mark. So thank you so much for attending, for your questions. Feel free to reach out. I'm on Twitter, of course, like we mentioned. If you have any follow-up questions. And yeah, so it was a pleasure. I hope that I didn't ramble too much. Thank you, John, for helping me set this up. And good luck. I wish you the best.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna plug last time for S'ATTAQ. If ever anybody here is having some like sort of issues with like a media company that they're dealing with, where they think that the behavior of their client is, you know, it's like breaking a contract, or they're being like behaving in a way that you think is unacceptable, we are always available to help. And so I've added in the chat here the both website, which is S'ATTAQ, SATTAQ.xyz, where you can also sign up for the newsletter that comes out once a month that Flavie runs. And we also have an email address where you can like write to us if you're having any issues that you'd like some advice on, and that's S'ATTAQ, SATTAQ.union@gmail.com. So feel free to reach out to us anytime. We're really happy to help if there's anything that people are going through.
Yep, we always need new members. There's a lot to be done, so yeah.
Yeah.
All right, thanks everyone. Have a great evening.
Okay.
Take care.
See you next time.
Bye everyone.